confirmed Thomas has teleportation skills, because how else do you get from the wall over here to your community segment that quickly, right?
Exactly. If only there was a camera from behind the scenes, people would probably assume it's like 50 feet, but it's really about like 5. So I didn't trip this time, but don't worry, there's some more left in this segment.
Shuffle step, shuffle step. Well, Thomas, we're here for communities, which means that we're talking loaded and rolling today. And of course, lots to talk about. First things first, I just want to get your quick hot take on Convoy.
Oh,
thoughts?
Man. I was super spicy on Twitter. I called it a Lehman Brothers moment, just to be very antagonistic. And then, obviously there's reports of potentially another one. So I said that's the Bear Stearns. It is a little hyperbole, but it is, coming from a tech startup where a trucking tech startup, you're building your tech, but you also have trucks, which was really good for AI Fleet, which we could be talking about in a little bit as well. But when you're a Convoy, you have this weird situation where you can have the best tech in the world, but you still got to convince these drivers and these shippers, and that's like herding cats.
Absolutely, just as JP said, right? Just because you build it doesn't necessarily mean that they will come. Well, keeping things on the spicy topic, numbers from the ATA about the quote-unquote driver shortage. That's one that's been kind of a hot topic here from us at FreightWaves. Of course, our founder and CEO, Craig Fuller, has gone back and forth with the ATA over Twitter and over some articles written over the last couple months or so. And now we've seen the ATA kind of revise down their numbers of this driver shortage, the drivers that we need to fill the industry, right? Down from 80K about 2 years ago, down to 72K last year, and now to 60. Are we actually filling these roles, or is there maybe this kind of change in what the ATA is measuring?
I think, well, I'm still looking on what they're measuring. I would love to get Chris Spears on, love to talk to the folks to see how are you coming up with this data, because as much as I like to make fun of the ATA's driver shortage, we can do that in media. I'm a talking head and pundit, of course, but I do like their truck parking and the other things they work on. So ATA, if you're listening to this, please give me a press pass next year. Alan Adler is really cool, but I can be cool too. But anyways, when we're talking about a driver shortage like that, it can be very misleading, because when you're looking at big data, and I'm pretty sure they're pulling employment data. They're using a statistical modeling of if we need this based on their own home.
And this is employment data for large carriers, because of course they are the representation group of our larger carrier base.
Yeah, so if we look at a profile in the make, there is, for the ATA's members, which do skew large carriers, there is a driver shortage because it's a turnover problem.
Right.
And so we do want to have a caveat, because in the broader market, those of you who, if you ask an OIDA member or something, or smaller carriers, there's not going to be a driver shortage. And if you look at broader data, spot market, if we had a persistent driver shortage, it would show up as, why would we be talking about a down market? All the carriers would be great all the time, because we would, for the sake of the argument, that's how supply and demand works. And so it's good for their situation. I think the 20K revision is because they are getting pushback on the narrative. They are a lobbying firm. When it comes to that, you do need to make adjustments, and everyone does that. Morgan Stanley and other ones have these sentiment indexes.
Right.
We have a pricing power index that we adjust, so it's all part of the struggle. But I do think that, one, we've done our part. Maybe we did save 20,000 jobs, but we did see the coolest part. Alan Adler wrote about it. He was down there. The driver shortage was not mentioned at the event until a Q&A session. So at the end of it, any questions? Not the main course. So pay close attention to the dog that isn't barking. And in this situation, if they were really wanting to push that and say, oh, we've done so well, there's less of a shortage, wouldn't that be in the keynote?
Right. So my whole thoughts on the driver shortage come from this idea that you can't have a shortage of something unless you have an understandable baseline for where things need to be to get things done, right? There is not a true baseline of drivers that need to be in the industry to move freight, because freight's subjective and it's so fragmented. Just because a carrier who has 7,000 trip power units only has 5,000 of them running doesn't mean that the industry itself isn't working, right? It doesn't mean that the industry is in trouble, because you might have the drivers who are just spread out in different parts, right? That's like having ingredients in different packages around your house, but saying, okay, I don't have enough flour to bake just because I haven't allocated all of my flour from my different packages into one package, right?
Yeah, it's such a large number. Have we split it? Have we segmented it? Where are the 60,000? Is this between LTL? Is this full truckload, private, public, carrier, parcel? You see how we can go in the weeds here. But Congressional Thomas and his aides would say, holy cow, there's a shortage. I need to build more bridges, or I need to get 18-year-olds in the truck. And so when we always like to make fun of the ATA's driver shortage, remember who it's targeted. It's not me, unfortunately. I'm not cool enough, but it's the decision makers. I think their business offices are right next door to Capitol Hill, so always remember their target audience. They did grace us with a hit piece against Craig Fuller's data, which thank you for that, of course, but at the end of the day, it's important to bring alternative viewpoints to this for the sake of conversation. It's very important. While I don't, fully understand, and I will one day where they get the data. I've checked their website about 3 times now, and they don't have the statistical modeling. Even in their press releases, it doesn't show. I will find out one day, dear listeners, and we will get to the bottom of this.
Truly digging. That's hard-hitting journalism right there. All right. Speaking of hard-hitting journalism, you had Reed Lostlot on from Lost Freight the other day, and he's built, of course, this incredible community with his Lost Freight Discord, with the folks on Twitter that he has now kind of pulled into this community space. But you guys had a really good conversation about the value of a truck list. Let's talk about it.
That's so much fun because brokers, the secret sauce, if you're a carrier, a broker who sells to carriers or you have to source, is your truck list, your book of business, of carriers you work with.
And you hold it close to the chest.
Yeah, you don't tell anyone. What Reed is doing is providing the carriers the option to be in control and create their own truck list. They have their own profile, and they can selectively send to brokers or allow discovery by multiple brokers. You would think that this hasn't been done before because the incentives are brokers would never share that.
Right.
Because you'll try to poach my carrier. And for carriers, they've never really had the time because they got their 1 or 2 brokers and they may not see the opportunity. And one thing that I think that when I was talking to Reed, I had him on XM, filled in for Road Dogg. I'm also going on Road Dogg today, so check it out, 5 to 7, filled in for Grace. The greatest point of the conversation from a narrative idea, and this is what I'm thinking, is it turns the concept of out-brokering a broker.
Right.
I used to be a broker. I used to work at a carrier. Brokers do not all sell at the same rate. The lane could be 1,000 and one broker's bad and it's 1,300, which is good for you. You want that extra 300.
Yep.
So by sending this out there and having more brokers compete for your truck, regardless of market conditions, because a brokerage isn't as good except that they put a truck on it, you can make more money. And I think that we're changing this dynamic. Reed said they're getting in the hockey stick growth. They're seeing a lot of growth here. He's got this community built. It's really great to see because old school trucking media is so cloistered. It's so Facebook. It's so negative. Oh, these brokers. Woe is me. My truck broke down. Woe is that broker who's keeping me from running my business. Good, better vibes. Better outcomes.
It spins it, right? How long do you think until we see a trucking Tinder where you just swipe right and left to find your carrier, swipe right and left to find your broker? Good idea, multi-million-dollar business. Should we build it?
Only trucks.
Only trucks. There we go.
I think we could definitely do it. There's got to be something in there because right now, carrier discovery is still brute force. You go down a list. Most drivers forget their FMCSA form MCS 150 is oftentimes the only thing, unless they post on a load board. Their data is harvested. They're still getting harassed. I still get calls, by the way, when I was a carrier. To give you an idea of how hard it is to keep accurate information, I still get calls asking if I have a truck in Laredo. I may get one today. Who knows? They like to call around 10. But yes, that is one of the great opportunities we have available. Keep an eye, Lost Freight, LOSTFR8, or freightgong.com. They have a gong now. It's wonderful.
It's pretty funny community over there. I will agree. Head on over, check them out. Give Reed a follow on Twitter. Give Thomas a follow on Twitter as well. You can throw me one if you want. I'm not quite as spicy as the both of them, but I would appreciate it anyways. And of course, as Thomas mentioned, you can catch him on Sirius XM tonight. When does Loaded and Rolling drop normally?
Normally, newsletter today around 2, XM Radio 5 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Ad replays again at 11 p.m. Eastern, and then the Loaded and Rolling the show Tuesdays 1 p.m. Eastern. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just look around. I get around. I'll send you something.
There you go. All right, Thomas. Thanks for being here for that. Of course, we'll have you for more carrier updates coming up in our second hour. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.